60 and 70. And well, as we got, pretty soon we've got 16 nozzles, 8 on the bottom and 8 on the top. You can't use those kind of sizes. So you just go smaller and smaller. So all the sizes end up being sort of in the 30, 40 thousandths range.
You couldn't go too small because did you worry about debris getting stuck in those at
Yeah.
all? Yeah.
It's a practical thing. You couldn't go below about 30 unless you wanted to face the music and filter your fuel and really get clean about everything, which is not a practical thing to do when you're rolling around
in a dirt floor.
Yeah, like rolling around the dirt. Yeah.
So anyway, that was how we atomized the fuel better and better and better. And the more we atomized it, the better the thing ran, the less damage there was from the detonation, little puddles of liquid going off. It just got happier and happier, and we used less fuel, always less. We were down to under 2 gallons a run at the end.
Wow.
And that thing ran good at, in late 66.
Yes.
The
98%.
97 or 98, yeah.
And that was with toluene also?
A little bit of toluene.
Little
Bob
toluene.
found a picture with Skinner pouring some out of a toluene can, right?
Ditzler Paint Company, toluene, dumping it right in.
No, it shows him dumping it into a 5-gallon
Yes.
can.
Yeah.
So he's actually,
out of the Ditzler can.
yeah. So
And
he's
that's,
actually
and that's the way you would mix it, but you wouldn't use a hydrometer, you would use
by volume.
by volume. So you'd put in a certain amount of toluene into the nitro and that in a 5-gallon can or whatever, and then you'd pour that you'd shake it up and then pour it into the tank.
Yeah, and then later, once we figured out where we needed to be, then we'd buy the drum of nitro, and at the time there was some kind of rule, wasn't there? You had to
cut it 2%.
You had to cut it. So we would take toluene with blue food dye in it down and say, put this stuff in, because you had to cut it with something, and they go, okay. So they would pour that in, and that would make us come out with our 97 or 98 or whatever we were looking for. So then we got the whole drum, so it gets jiggled on the way home, and so it's just already mixed. So you just take it out of the drum until you run out and then do it again, right?
No Marbane.
No, we never, because that just was that smell.
Well, it's a pretty good lubricant too. If you put it in the fuel, the pump lives a little bit better.
We got into some lubricants. One time we decided, having a model airplane background, I saw castor oil, right?
Yeah.
Castor oil saved me in
Bean oil.
1952 or something. And so we started. Hot Rod Magazine had a picture of me holding a little can. It says "Trick of the Week" on this can.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's castor oil.
Oh.
Because we would put it in the pump. When you got home, you clean out your
lube it up.
and put it in your fuel pump.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we started putting that in the fuel. Well, what happened was the fuel leaves and the castor oil kind of coats all the inside of the blower and the intake manifold and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty soon it fills up the spark plugs. Remember we use those recessed kind of spark plugs?
Yes.
It would fill them up with castor oil.
Oh.
It was ugly.
Ugh.
That was a 1-week experiment, that one was. I think we ended up winning a race at Fontana that day. Just by luck. We certainly didn't deserve to win, but somehow we stumbled through. And
How much castor oil did you put in?
I don't remember, but it was obviously too much. Just a little bit.
Because we ran the castor. I still got 2 cases of castor oil out there.
You want to sell some? No, that's all right.
And we used it in the crankcase. And boy, it would absorb the fuel like you wouldn't believe. I mean, it would put the fuel in suspension and still keep the lubricity, which was at that point pretty good. But we were running a 421 Pontiac, and it had main bearings about that big around, and the bearing speed was so high it would just wipe the bearings out. So the oil wasn't the solution to the bearing problem.
Mm.
As far as the other components, Tom, like the barrel valve and stuff, is that all pure Hilborn stuff?
No, we would modify those.
But it wasn't an Enderley barrel valve. It was always a Hilborn.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We never had any Enderley, other than the one time when we tried an Enderley, which we did. That's kind of a separate story. But no, it was just if we modified it, it would just be a Hilborn part with modified, and then we would only modify it right where when the barrel valve closes, it covers up a hole
Mhm.
And so they had a V shape in this little piece that came up and covered it up. So you could modify that shape. Some people would cut that surface down till it was straight, then rotate the barrel valve a little further, so that it just instantly went to full fuel flow.
Mhm.
But you could mess with that kind of stuff. And it only had to do with just the transition from idle to on. And then you could also modify how much got in the later barrel valve where when you shut the barrel valve, the fuel went out the back of the barrel valve. You could modify that a little bit if you wanted to. But there was no performance in any of that stuff.
Some of the surfers' folklore is about fuel system components that did nothing, hollow relief valves, hollow check valves. Is there some truth in that?
Oh, absolutely. Everybody ran a check valve from the barrel valve going down to the port nozzles. There'd be a block, and then there'd be, say, 4 nozzles came out one side, 4 came out the other side for the port nozzles. And
I think that's the one that shows it.
this one here shows it better, I think.
Okay.
Right behind on that side of the belt right there. You
Right.
can see this hose comes down here.
Right.
There's a little check valve right there screwed into the block where the 4 port nozzles come out each side
Right.
of that block. Well, anyway, the fuel coming to the block comes down that hose and goes through this check valve. And Don was talking about how they would get air in the port nozzles, and then when they whack the throttle, the thing would backfire.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's all true at low fuel pressures, but as you raise your fuel pressure and you squeeze down your nozzles, the vacuum can't suck the fuel out of the port nozzles. So you don't have to worry about that anymore. And so that check valve was in there for that purpose. And obviously we didn't need it, so we could have fuel all the way to the nozzle all the time, even when it was idling, just by having higher pressures and smaller nozzles. Because the same amount came out the end, right?
And you raise the pressure by reducing the size of the nozzle.
Just reduced the size, right?
You didn't hop up the pump or anything.
Yeah, I was going to ask you
No,
about the pump.
Oh, yeah, we could use more fuel, but the magneto couldn't handle it, and the thing would just slow down. So and we weren't trying to smother. Most people were in trouble on the combustion, and so they were backing up the lead and putting too much fuel in. They were doing things to cover up their real problem, which was the too much compression ratio. Since we didn't have that, we could just sort of optimize everything and just run it where it wanted to go. And most things we could go too far and go, well, it slowed down. Well, we'll just go back. And the same thing happened on the fuel.
So you had a bigger tuning window than some of others that had higher compression ratios, right? Things were.
Yeah, they didn't have a window. They just had to smother it, and then they could unsmother it until it blew up. But they had to kind of keep it smothered, and they'd have to back up on things, which makes it worse. Because if you back up on the ignition advance, it aggravates other things. So that's why it never really worked out well for a lot of people.
Because you raced so often, you might find yourself on a cold, damp night at Lions, and 24 hours later, or even 12 hours later, be on a hot, sunny day out in Fontana. Completely different conditions. Did you have baseline fuel setups for like a night race at Lions or a daytime race at Fontana? Or how did you reconfigure the fuel system for the next day if the conditions were completely different?
We weren't that sophisticated, and there wasn't that much difference in our setup. Nowadays, that's important because it's how much power they make and whether they smoke the tire and all that.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't worry about it. We didn't have to smoke the tire all the time anyway. And we never really got caught up in all that clutch stuff. And Skinner and I just weren't interested. Let's just make a lot of power.
But the fuel system would be happy with either condition. It wasn't that temperamental.
No, it didn't care. The amount of power it made would be different, but
But it was still safe.
yeah, let Mike worry about that.
And the driver can influence it at that point, put the brake on,
Yeah.
coming out of
Yeah,
the gate
you
and
see
stuff
Mike.
like
I mean,
that.
he's yanking on the brake when he leaves.
Yeah.
or he's trying to slide the
The
clutch
Gaius
a
was the
little
first guy I ever saw do that, put the brake on.
bit. All guys was a master at that. He mastered everything, really.
Yeah.
Anything to do with driving, anyway.
Yeah.
But all the drivers were pretty good about it. They all figured it out. You know, maybe they learned it from somebody or whatever, but they'd all watch each other, and they were all pretty good at it. The guys with Fuller cars that had the big brake levers, which is so cool.
Like out of the cockpit?
Yeah, yeah.
Like an old Rat Fink car or something.
Right.
Yeah, but they would grab the thing below the knob, and you could see them working that thing, you know. Fuller's brake handles were always classic. You know. They weren't no billet crap, you know. They were.
But they were grabbing it lower so they could modulate it better because up high they had too much leverage.
No, up here was for the Rat Fink photo
Yeah,
or
okay.
something.
Right. Yeah.
The practical place to grab it was
Yeah.
down lower.
And keep your hand close to the steering wheel.
Yeah, that way. Yeah, they weren't very far off the steering wheel. They were right here in case they had to.
Yeah.
Did you
I
have
know-
a
I know-
filter in the line?
No, we never did because we didn't want to have to deal with the hassle of it, you know. And then once you break the connection beyond the filter, that doesn't get filtered, and
Yeah.
because we never wanted it to turn into a hassle. This was the idea was we were going to have fun, and if it subtracted from the fun, sorry, it's got to go.
Something I want people to understand about the fuel system is one of the most elegant parts of the car is the feed line to the fuel pump. It's this beautifully bent and hand-formed tube.
Yeah,
But that was made by Mike Sorokin,
Mike
correct?
Sorokin. Yeah, that's what he did for a living. He worked at a hydraulics place, made hydraulic lines.
Yeah.
This is a pretty nice shot of it. It came back. Yep.
And it had a drain port at the lowest point.
Yeah.
And
So
it-
yeah, it was actually a little bit behind the low point, so that when the front was picked up, it was the low point, and then you could drain all the fuel right out of it.
Yeah.
It was wonderful because we were still changing over to alcohol. I don't know why we didn't think of, you know, the way you guys warm your Cackle cars up now.
Oh, with the
Put it in the
siphon.
head.
Yeah.
Put it right in the top of the motor. Yeah.
Yeah, we were idiots, you know.
Yeah.
No sleeves.
When you went,
No, one time we did sleeves.
Yeah.
Oh, we had a terrible sleeve experiment.
Oh, let's hear about this.
Oh, it was awful. People would put sleeves in, you know, and somebody'd say, "Oh yeah, I got 2 sleeves in mine," and somebody else, "Oh, I got 1," and yeah, it works out great, okay. And so Skinner and I thought, well, we'll be slick. We'll put 8 sleeves in the motor, and we'll make them big, thick ones, you know, and they'll be wonderful, right? Ah, great idea. So we did that. We forgot about the fact that the deck, where the bolt holes, the only thing that keeps that deck from leaving is the water jacket on the outside and the 4 sleeves. Well, now we've got the sleeves disconnected because we've bored them out, and now we just slid in them. So we got no help from the bore anymore.
So there's nothing holding the deck on.
That was another one of them. Long Beach, we got all the way to the tower, and there was just water, head gaskets, stuff flying out because nothing was hooked to nothing.
Right.
So, well, put an X through that plan. That didn't work
Yeah.
too good.